Hi, I'm Dan Whittaker. I'm here today to talk to you about the short game and the importance of some key fundamentals in the short game, and also how you can use your pivot action to generate every different type of spin that you could want around the greens. We're going to look at 3 shots today. We're going to have a look at a cut the legs under it, like a stand-up type shot, a trap chip which goes in quite low, hits once, has a lot of spin, and then just kind of semi-releases and checks up towards the hole. And the other one is going to be a putt type chip, which is going to be played as a RUNYAN style. Now, first of all, we need to understand that the 2 most important elements of chipping and pitching are speed. Okay, number 1 is speed. We have to have good speed through the ball. If we don't have good speed, we cannot monitor what the club face is doing. So we have to have the body accelerating at all times. We have a look at the very best chippers out there that have been, like the likes of Whittaker, and he has a lot of speed around the greens, but also generates a lot of spin with quite low trajectory. The second fundamental is pressure. Okay, we always want to keep the right hand pressure on the shaft. We don't want to let it get this way. Okay, we're always trying to keep the right hand underneath the shaft, whether we're going to be playing one where the leg cuts the legs under it and the hands underneath it, it's never passing it, or whether we're playing this low drive one where the right hand stays behind it. We're always trying to keep that right hand behind the shaft at all times, providing the pressure into it. So it's always at the finish and the underside of it there, based off the pivot, the type of pivot that you're going to use. And the pivot only changes based on ball position, weight distribution, and shaft lean. There's 3 things of what's going to change the trajectory and the spin on the shot that you're going to use. What else we want to make sure you're doing is that you always have a constance to the arc. Okay, I see a lot of guys will come in, and even if they're not flicking at it like this, even when they're trying to cut the legs under it, good players often try and get very narrow here to try and get the bounce working underneath it to generate the spin. That's not needed. We need to make sure we use the pivot at all times and maintaining the length to the arc, therefore providing the spin that we need, and therefore looking after the club head and the shaft and the actual club face and the loft based on the radius of the arc. Okay, first off, the first shot we're going to have a look at is this like little trap chip. Okay, and this is played, okay, so you want to land the ball up a green, okay, and you want it to hit quite aggressive and low, and you want it to drive in. What happens with this one when it drives into the green, because it's driving forwards, the first bounce will be very aggressive, okay, and what will happen is that the first bounce will also be quite high but short, so it will be up very quickly. Now the reason for this is when we're playing this trap shot, we're pivoting this way, so the shoulders are working this way, down and up, based off the weight being forwards, they're working this way. So as the left shoulder goes down more in the backswing, so too will the club face get a little bit closed. As the left shoulder works up in the follow through, the club face will then be looking back at me, which is keeping it open and therefore providing the spin. So the slight de-lofting in the backswing gives the low trajectory, the slight holding open on the way through gives the spin. But it's not done via the arms, it's all done by the weight distribution and the pivot action. You'll notice that I use a putting grip a lot when I'm chipping. This just goes back to old for me. I used to play golf and grew up a little bit watching a lady called Joanne Morley, who played on the Solheim Cup, has played, and she's been their vice captain, and she puts a lot with the putting, she chips a lot with the putting grip. So I did it. It's also very good for guys who tend to be very, very wristy around the greens, because the putting grip eliminates the wrist and locks them out a little bit. If I was going to hit this low drivey chip now, what you'll find is the ball position will be further back in the stance, and the weight will be a lot more on the front foot here. With the weight on the front foot, you'll see that I'm going to go down in the backswing, the club face will close, I'll go up and the club face will look back at me. This will come off quite low and take a little divot after it. So we'll be seeing the weight, the shoulder goes down and up. So you could hear there how it was very much the ball and then the ground. So it's driving in a lot. So that hit quite aggressively in the green, it went quite low. It hit once and then checked and then just released out towards the hole. This is played a lot on English golf courses, a very English type shot, but it's missing a lot from a lot of American players' games. So we'd see this left shot that goes down and then up, and you could hear there it's the ball and then the ground. So this is giving, the weight distribution is giving me this little drivey flight. Club face looking back at me at the finish right here is what's providing the spin. Let's do one last one for you, a second here. And you'll see that at all time I have the angle in the right wrist and it's held. Okay, especially after the backswing. Once it slightly goes back a little, depending on how far back the club swings, so the weight of the club will set the wrist. So there, you can see this club face is now looking back at me at the finish right here. Now, a great way to be able to practice these is with the right hand alone, because if you're not using the pivot, you can't trap these at all. So what I would tend to do is have my right hand on it and make sure that you're not doing this. I'm trying to flick at it with just the hand without the pivot, because you'll just thin it along the ground. What you're trying to do is get the weight on the front foot here, get the right elbow just against the side of the body, and then you're going to let the left shoulder go down, and then it's up, just trapping it forwards quite nicely. And you can see that it's all just body action controlling this shot. So it's all pivot driven from the short game, back, through. That was a pretty good shot there, we drove in quite nicely. So we can see that I can only hit that shot if I'm using the pivot. This is the same for all of the short game. The reason I'm talking about the pivot being in control of the short game is if you ever look at someone like Phil Mickelson, who's very handsy, the same as Ernie Els, and they will have very handsy short games. So they won't have much pivot, they'll be using the hands a lot. But for guys who are trying to get it so that the pivot drives the golf swing, they will have they'll have the pivot control in the short game. Anthony Kim, all body in the long game, body in the short game. Matteo Manacero the same, and Tiger Woods is going that way, he's getting the body in charge. So that the body's controlling the club, we just maintain the pressure from the hands, therefore that maintains the angle of attack, the speed of the club head. The next shot I'm going to do is what we call cut the legs under it. It's different to the trap because the trap was hitting down. This one we're essentially sliding the club underneath the ball. Now, an element often misunderstood with the golf club in the short game is what's going to happen to the bounce right here. If we have a look at the back edge of this golf club right there, we see how it drops away in this region. This means that there's very little bounce in the heel. This has been done by the guys at Nike, and they've dropped that heel right out of it. So as the heel drops away this direction, it means when I want to play the shots where I'm sliding under it, it's got no drag from the heel, so it can very easily slide under the ball. Okay, what you'll find now is this one, the shaft will be level, it won't be forwards. The shaft will be level and the weight will be back in the heels. Now from here the pivot won't be as angular because there's not much weight set on the left side. From here I've got the weight in the heels. The weight in the heels is what's going to give the shallow angle of attack and let the club slide under the ball. We know that the weight's not going forward, so at some point the club will slightly pass me, okay, but the right hand will still be underneath it. It won't be coming short-siding me. It'll be coming very narrow. So you see I've got weight in the heels a little here, and all I'm going to do is make this little pivot back and through. So you hear how soft that was. The club simply slid right underneath the golf ball. It wasn't trapping against the face, letting it fire off low with spin. That was cutting the legs under it, so it landed very, very, very soft on the green. Once again, you'll see I have my weight back in the heels. The club shaft is level, not forwards. And the pivot will become this way a little more. Okay, and this will have a lot of spin and be very, very soft when it lands. Okay, so I've got a bit of weight in the heels, back, and that's landed so soft on the green. It's landing on a down slope this, and it's still just killing and just trickling down that slope towards the hole. The key is that I'm not making this movement, I'm instead just staying back in the heels and just pivoting and letting the club pass me. See my right hand's still underneath the shaft at the finish, and the club face is still looking back at me. If I play this one right hand alone, what we would see with that weight back in the heels a little bit, how I can pivot, maintaining that pressure. If I let that pressure go, it's going to be thin, but that was very, very soft on the green, and that club face is still looking back at me right there. So that's the way that we're going to try and play that, cut the legs under it. So it's all pivot driven. A great guy for you all to look at is going to be Steve Stricker. No one's got a better pivot driven short game than Steve, and it travels over his long game and his short game match one another. So he has what I call a seamless golf game. It all matches one another. It's not that he's doing one thing when he's got a full shot and another thing when he's got a short shot. Everything is the same. Lastly, I'm going to play a shot called a RUNYAN. This was based off one from Paul Runyan, who used to be on tour. He had a phenomenal short game. He once beat Sam Snead in the final of the PGA. Snead was apparently knocking it 50 to 60 yards past him, but Runyan just chipped and putted him to death. What you'll find here is I have the shaft quite upright. My arms are away from my body a little bit to create a pendulum. The further forward my hands are, and always more over the neck of the golf club, the more the club will swing back and through this way, the ball will run up the face and the softer it will land. But this is essential, we have some speed on this. So this is like a putt, so all we're doing is rocking the shoulders and just putting it down. But it's going to be very soft because the club head's going to pass the ball. So quite upright here, and we're just simply putting it forwards. And that's landed very, very soft and just trickling out towards the hole. Now, if you get very good at these, this is the one that will become a great asset to your short game, because you're simply playing this like a putt. You're choosing a line and you get to feel like you could almost hold some of these because they're going in so soft. So the shaft's quite upright and the elbows are out, and I simply rock the shoulders, rock back, rock through, pick my point, and now it's trickling down the slopes, taking the break. Just missed the edge of the hole on the left, but it's a pretty good result, okay, because you're able to play this like a putt. It's simply just rocking the shoulders back and through, and then just letting the ball almost feel like it's running up the face a little bit, and then it just lands very, very, very softly and trickles out towards the hole. I'll be following this video up with another one, which will be to do with shots out the rough around the greens and to do with flop shots. I do hope you've enjoyed this video. I'd like to thank Texarkana Country Club for allowing me to use their great facility. If you'd like to hear some more from myself, you can. You visit my website, danwhitakergolf.com, or email me, dan@danwhitakergolf.com. Thanks a lot.